Hello, I'm going to talk about death and clues in the title of this video. It's not a particularly positive subject, I appreciate, and I'll give a trigger warning. It's probably going to get more and more grim as I get through the monologue. Um, yeah, and I kind of indicated how grim it would be with the thumbnail. Um, and I really ought to have made a note of the artist. It's an image that stuck with me for years since I first saw it about 20 years ago. I've got it on a postcard somewhere. So yeah, go and check out the artist. Yeah, arguably her life story and artwork a lot more interesting than this video. Anyway, self-deprecation to one side. Let's get into it. So I'm looking at my notes, and I've been partly inspired to make this video by Arlene at Artist on the Spectrum, who did a really fascinating video in which she refers to the big sleep. And about 3 weeks ago, I wrote a poem called The Big Sleep. I thought I was being ever so clever. I thought it's quite funny to refer to death as the big sleep, although I really knew that it's not that original. But the poem itself was, I can put a link to that as well, if you really want to read it. It sums up, it's not me trying to be funny, the title was a bit silly, but the poem itself, just straight up honesty about how I feel about death. And I'm going to continue that honesty in this video. Go and watch Arlene's video about the big sleep. She gives her own trigger warning. It's not all fun and games, but it's really fascinating, as I've said. And I think if you're autistic, you'll find it resonating. I mean, I have as an autistic person, I think I'm, perhaps more logical in my thinking than most other people. I suppose a lot of people have that sort of attitude about themselves because we all think we know best. We've all got a very slanted view in the world. My view is the best view. But to generalize, I think autistic people like things to make sense more than perhaps the neurotypical majority. And I have a very pragmatic attitude about death, and even more so as I'm, in my 40s, processing this late acquired knowledge that I'm autistic. I'm going through a lot of post-diagnosis grief, looking back at the opportunities missed and the lack of understanding and, accidentally hurting people through no ill intention, all of that swirling around. And I'm really, really tired. I've talked about autism and aging in my previous video, so this one I think makes a lot of sense to do next. And in the video that I've mentioned that Arlene's made, she says, I look forward to the big sleep and I'm exhausted from always trying to figure things out. And that absolutely speaks to me. I'm exhausted from trying to sort of second guess, like, well, what should I be doing to fit in this world? Because I've got it wrong so many times. And I'm just tired of doing that. I'm really, really tired of masking, of getting it wrong. And the big sleep means that I wouldn't have to do that anymore. Now, I have to emphasize that I have no intention of having the big sleep voluntarily anytime soon. So if you're thinking, was this a preamble to something really dreadful? No. No plans. And if you have that sort of ideation, then again, I should put some links below. I will put some links in below for people in the UK. I've got them written in my diary somewhere to share with people, because life is really hard for lots of people, and thankfully there are people within the UK and I'm sure elsewhere that you can speak with, who will reframe your perspective and help you get through a tough time. So this is not a preamble to something truly dreadful. It's just me being open and honest about death through my autistic lens. So yeah, I'm exhausted, and I'm not dreading death. Like, well, don't get me wrong. I don't want to be. I don't want to be like just hit by a bus or oh well. I want to have a fulfilling life, but I don't see death as an entirely bad thing. And someone who wrote about death a lot more than I have, and probably will, is Philip Larkin, who, for all his personal faults, and we all have our personal faults, although autism is not one. Autism is simply a neurotype. Yeah, for all his faults, Philip Larkin wrote some wonderful poetry, and one of his big themes was death, and he wrote a poem called "Oh Bad." Now I had to check the pronunciation of that. I thought it was "obeyed," and I've only just learnt today that it has a French origin. Again, I'm info dumping. I'm going to quote from the poem, which is about death, and it's not indifference to death, it's dreading death. So, firstly, 2 quotes from the poem. The sure extinction that we travel to. So, I think that's a really creative way of describing the finality of death, and the anaesthetic from which none come round. And I think that gives death a peaceful gloss. That word anaesthetic, sort of a hazy nowhere. I think Larkin arguably makes death sound like a good thing with that quote. But what I really like about the poem "Oh Bad" is the ending. So I'm going to read it now. Meanwhile, telephones crouch, getting ready to ring in locked-up offices, and all the uncaring, intricate, rented world begins to rouse. The sky is white as clay with no sun. Work has to be done. Postmen, like doctors, go from house to house. And I particularly like the very last line, postmen, like doctors, go from house to house, because it really simply and succinctly summarizes how indifferent the world is about, my existence if I go, when I go, and all of our existences. Life goes on after we're gone. And that image of people going about their daily work when we're no longer here, just sums up the fact that life goes on even when we're not here, as I've just said. And I find it quite reassuring, I'm not meant to be here forever. I'm not going to be here forever. Life carries on. So, yeah, I think maybe in the past I was a little bit more worried about death, but given how tired I am, given the processing of my autism diagnosis is ongoing and is itself, as I said in my previous video, energy sapping, I'm becoming more and more, accepting of the fact that I've only got a few years left if I'm lucky. I'm going to just scroll down my notes. Yeah, I was going to read out a poem by, it's not a poem, it's a tweet that I chopped up, added line breaks to, took out a few words, but all of the words within the so-called poem belong to Dr. Ezzeddine Shihab, who has been helping people with brutal injuries in Gaza. And it's a wonderful, not wonderful, that's the wrong word, but you can read news reports and read all the facts and just find the situation dreadful. I would like to think, because talking of indifference, about death, what I find really, really disturbing right now is people's seeming indifference to the genocide. And I know I've mentioned it in previous videos, and people might say, well, why do you keep bringing it up? This is an autism YouTube channel. Well, it's my autism YouTube channel, and the genocide's had a huge effect on my mental health. And yeah, I know I'm in a privileged position in that I'm thousands of miles away from this unimaginably nightmarish conflict or genocide onslaught on from huge military power against a defenseless population. I know I'm at a distance from it, and I'm privileged to be at a distance. It's an accident that we're in the world, and it's an accident where we happen to arrive in the world. I'm lucky I didn't arrive in Palestine during a genocide. Um, but I'll put a link into um, the so-called poem, which is in fact, what I'll do is I'll put a link to uh, the doctor's YouTube channel, not YouTube channel, his Twitter, Dr. Ezzeddin Shihab. I'll put a link to his Twitter, and you can read for yourself. And it's just so, well, it's traumatizing just to find out about the ways in which other human beings kill other human beings. And it gets to a point where you're like, I can't be witness to this anymore. Um, you know, I'd put in my notes 100 ways to die. Or really should be 100 ways to kill. 1,000 ways to kill. It seems that part of the world has become a laboratory for how evil people can be. And there are no consequences for people carrying this out. So just these multiple deaths, the multiple manners and the multiple ways in which people have been killed makes me think, well, what's the point? Because I'm part of a species that hasn't progressed, really, in the thousands of years. The only thing that seems to have progressed is technology, but the human psyche, the respect for other humans, it's just vanished. And I don't want to be part of a species that has such a lack of, a shred of care for other people that aren't them. It just, I haven't been able to wrap my head around it for the last 18, 19 months. So I'm ashamed. And I'm because I'm autistic. I like solutions. I like logic. I want to be able to help people. I want to be able to say, well, that's the problem, and here's a solution. But with Gaza, I'm completely helpless. And yes, I know that there are other conflicts in the world. But that's not. It shouldn't be a way to silence someone when they have a good concern about Gaza. Oh, there are lots of problems in the world. Why are you focusing on that one at the expense of others? That's just an excuse not to deal with any problems. So having looked at the situation, this daily killing, it's just made me think about death even more. Why wouldn't it? I'm bound to think about death when I'm presented with images of death just constantly. And only quite recently have I got better at not looking at my phone so frequently. And it does help by not having a phone that works, as is currently the situation for me. It's quite good because I'm not doom scrolling. But the genie's out the bottle now. That's a really rubbish way of putting it, but I know without looking that as I'm speaking now, people are being slaughtered. For the audacity of living in a place that has resources or access to resources that other people who already have enough want. And it's absolutely sickening. So I'm gonna wind up and afterwards wonder why I didn't structure this more effectively. But as I said in my last video, I think part of the value in doing these types of videos is that it's unfiltered, very loosely structured, not hemmed in by the need to entertain and tell bad jokes. And as ever, I hope that there's something within this monologue, meandering monologue, that you find is recognizable. But I'm just going to end on another note that I've made, a last note. I was reminded earlier today about the film Klaus, and in particular the song Invisible by Zara Larsson. And there's a point in the film where Klaus, or Santa Claus, if you haven't seen the film, go and watch it. It's probably my favourite film. I love it. There's a point in the film where, spoiler alert, Klaus goes to, rejoin someone who he loves very much. And when he says, "I'm coming, love," on his route to joining her, it makes me rather emotional. So yeah, spoiler alert. And the point I'm really trying to make is not just to praise that film, although it is amazing, but to give yet another example of how acceptable it is to welcome the end. Yes, this is a multi-million-pound cartoon, essentially, but it really spoke to me. In I know it's sort of generally made for kids, although I say that a lot of adults love this film. But I'm like that character, steadily creeping towards that end, thinking, actually, it's a place where we all end up. It's the place of no conflict. This character is very tired when he says that line about going to rejoin his loved one. And whether I rejoin loved ones from my own life who aren't here anymore remains to be seen. I will let you know. Although, of course, I can't do that, can I? But I said, and I've said in several videos as well, that I like peace more and more so, particularly knowing that I'm autistic and I don't want conflict and I want order. Not being here anymore is an absence of conflict, a need to try and rectify things. The sure extinction that we all travel to has no conflict, has nothing by definition. It's peaceful. Eternal silence, the big sleep. I was just looking at the video, the name of the song by Zara Larsson, Invisible. Well, that's it, being invisible. Although that's not the meaning of the song. Check out the song, it's amazing as well. So yeah, this video, I'm not sure whether there's anything here that will resonate with anyone. I think I will, when I start to figure out what I'm doing with this channel, figure out how to make YouTube videos, I might return to this theme, possibly with more structure and prompts. But I hope that there's been something that is, at least interesting. And and like I said, if you are, having thoughts, the sort of thoughts that I'm referring to, and you're in the UK, check out the links below. But if you're not in the UK, please seek out the equivalent resources, speak with people, because as much as I've been banging on about death, there's a lot to do in life, such as advocating for autistic people. And I like to think that the longer I'm here, the more likely it is that I'll help other autistic people, diagnosed or not, and help them to live more fulfilling lives. Because really what keeps me going is the thought that I might be making a difference, and I can't make a difference, well, minimal difference, absolutely minimal difference in Palestine, but I can make much more of a difference elsewhere and for other people. And that's reason enough for me to stick around. And obviously, my family, obviously. And if you're struggling to see what's the point, then I would say that the point is that people love you, um, even if it doesn't feel like it. So, yeah, thank you as ever for bearing with me. And yeah, I'll look forward to making the next video and reading your comments if you have any. Take care.